The Niners are entering the second half of the season, and they didn't do that much at the trade deadline. Why? Is it because they're so good and they just all the reinforcements they need are in-house, or is it because they're not so good? They're having a ton of injury issues, and it just might not be their year. Jesse.
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways you can look at this. You can say, all right, well, maybe the 49ers know they're getting CMC back and Dre Greenlaw, and what trade are you going to make that is better than those two guys? And they would be right. You're not going to make a trade that's bigger than CMC or adding Dre Greenlaw onto this roster, assuming that they're even close to what they were before. But you can also look at it and say, well, maybe they just know the writing's on the wall and there's no point in committing big time money to a future asset. I think what makes this tough, Grant, is we don't know who they were necessarily in on and who they weren't. And to me, the 49ers have kind of turned into this team that gets a big name player at the trade deadline. That's what we've come accustomed to. So when you go out and you get Kalia Davis's stunt double, Khalil Davis, then it's a little bit disappointing, because we're expecting something big. And I actually think, with no knowledge for sure, but I actually do think that they were in on a big time player. When that report came out about, and I think it was from Diana Rossini, and I think it's important that it was from her because she seems pretty tapped in with the 49ers. She said there was a team that called on Simmons from the Titans.
Justin Simmons.
Yes, I believe that was the San Francisco 49ers that made that call. I really do. And I think they were probably willing to offer up like a first and a fifth. And it just wasn't going to be enough for a premier interior player like Simmons, somebody at that level. They're probably looking more for two firsts, a first and a second, something like that. But I believe the 49ers really tried to make a big swing and they missed. And then they pivoted from that point and said, okay, well, we're not going to get a player of that caliber. It just doesn't exist at this deadline. Let's try to fill out the rest of the roster. We do need a player at this position. It's not going to be flashy, but it will help. It will add some depth. And so, although I'm disappointed as a 49er,
going from like Justin Simmons to Khalil Davis is like going from, hey, we're going to buy a Ferrari. Psych, it's a Hyundai.
but the thing is like, when of the 49ers are always willing to at least try and make that call. And we've heard the stories, we called about Jimmy Garoppolo and then they said no. So we said, what about Tom? Or we called on Khalil Mack. We actually made a better offer than what the Bears offered, but the Raiders just wouldn't trade him to us. And then we've seen them make the big trades, the Fords, the CMCs. So it's not like they were afraid to do that. I really, truly believe that they tried and it just wasn't in the cards. And yes, it's disappointing, but I don't know that it necessarily says that the 49ers don't think they can be contenders. I think that it just says the league wasn't willing to give them what they were looking for at this trade deadline. And they're going to have to find that within to go out and be contenders this year.
Can we just list the teams that were more aggressive than the 49ers at the trade deadline? Doesn't mean they're better than the Niners. Teams that were more aggressive. Patriots. Excuse me. Chiefs.
Steelers.
Ravens.
Bills.
Lions. Cardinals.
Bengals.
Okay, so that's like 8 teams. I can't count. But those were teams that
Commanders,
spot, maybe ahead of the Niners, and made bigger moves. Like the Lions going out and get Zadarius Smith. You can't tell me the Niners couldn't have used Zadarius Smith. I mean, no offense to Leonard Floyd.
I actually have something to say about that. And did we say Commanders? They got Marshawn Lattimore.
Commanders.
Okay. I said a couple weeks ago when
I said the Patriots,
Hutchinson went down with that injury, that the fallout for the 49ers is, yes, the obvious. Aiden Hutchinson's not there. That's a big time loss. But the other piece of this is that it's likely that both the 49ers and the Lions now, who lost not only Hutchinson, but they lost Davenport, who they had signed this offseason. They lost both defensive ends, are going to be after the same types of players, Zadarius Smith, Jadeveon Clowney, those types of players. And ultimately, if that was the case, the Lions were going to win out because they were the more desperate team. They will pay more. They need 2 pass rushers, not 1. They need it more than the Niners. And I don't know that the Niners were in on Zadarius Smith. I don't know why they wouldn't be, but the Lions were always going to win that race because they needed him a lot more than the 49ers. And that's something that was pretty clear the moment that Hutchinson went down, that they might step on each other's toes for the same type of players, and the Lions were going to win out on that.
When they traded for McCaffrey a couple of years ago, they were reeling. They needed someone to sort of kickstart their season. When they traded for Emmanuel Sanders and Chase Young, I mean, they were on a 3-game losing streak with Chase Young, but they had won 5 in a row. Like they had gotten off to really hot starts that year.
Yeah.
And when they made those 2 particular trades, maybe my memory's deceiving me, but I don't think it is. I feel like John Lynch in particular talked about feeling like the team was in a really good spot and maybe 1 player away, and that Chase Young, Emmanuel Sanders could be that 1 player on a team that was already doing well and well positioned. I don't know that this Niners team is 1 player away. It's for sure not Khalil Davis. And to act like, well, that 1 player could be Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, but you had him last year playing great and you still made a move. So that's why I feel like this privately, Kyle Shanahan, who's brutally honest with himself about his teams, might look at this one and be like, I mean, our quarterback has 13 touchdowns and 9 turnovers. God knows if Christian McCaffrey is going to play this year or what kind of shape he'll be in. Maybe we don't want to trade a 3rd-round pick for a rental like we did last year. Maybe that's not the move this year.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I do. I think it's also possible, a lot of people really push back on you saying that the owners are kind of done with spending money. They want to see the production before they're just willing to open up the pocketbooks. That's also entirely possible. They did. They did spend a lot of money. I'm also curious to know what the conversations are behind the scenes. Like, I remember Kyle Shanahan 2 off seasons ago, maybe it was last off season, but he talked about how he hasn't felt pressure from up above to perform, and that gives him relief, and he's able to just go about his job knowing that he's got a job tomorrow. He doesn't have to worry about it. He can operate the way he wants to operate. Is that still the case? Now, I assume that it is. I mean, the team was just in the Super Bowl last year. I assume that it is. But there are things that have happened to where it seems like this regime is starting to operate without caring about the future as much, without keeping the future in mind. Signing guys like CMC why? Why are you paying him more? He's already on the roster. Like, what's he going to do? Hold out? And then that article that came out today where you would put the transcript in of what Kyle Shanahan said. He talked about how that injury happened this offseason. Well, if that's the case, then you knew before you signed him. Like, that, to me, cemented what we all assumed was that you knew before you gave him that guaranteed money that he was hurt.
Incriminates
He was
himself so
ailing.
much. I'm sorry.
Too much.
Yeah.
And so that, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, you can make an argument either way. I guess I don't want to fully speculate on what's going on behind the scenes, even though I just did, because I don't ultimately know. But I am curious to know what it really is like. Does he still have full autonomy? Does he still feel like he can operate the way that he wants to? Or has the ownership kind of put a kibosh on spending and said, listen, you've got enough. Figure it out. We've already made bad investments this offseason, multiple bad investments in Brandon Ayuk because you just had to keep him, giving CMC guaranteed money. He hasn't even stepped on the field. We're not going to do it anymore. We are worried about our future. We need to save as much money in the future as possible. We're not going to add more to this. You should be good enough to get it done with what you have. So go figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, we're spending our money on Leeds United for the rest of the year. All right. Sorry.